Hello, and welcome to the Dissing My Ability podcast. I am Ken Meeker, certified professional coach, owner of Vitality Career Coaching, and am the creator of this podcast. This episode marks the end of the first season of the Dissing My Ability podcast. My original concept for the Dissing My Ability podcast was to pull back the curtain and to share with others what the real life lived experiences of living with disability can be like. I believed then, as I do today, that there is too much shame, stigma, and stereotyping of what it means to be living with a disability. I am so very grateful to all of the guests that have come onto my show and shared their experiences so openly and candidly, and entrusted the audience and me with what can be very personal stories about living with or encountering disability. Every person's experience is different, and every person's experience has value. Something I hope that has come across in the conversations that take place on this podcast is that disability is a spectrum. No two disabilities are the same, and even within any particular type of disability, there's often a wide range of variables, symptoms, causes, and outcomes. What the larger disability community has in common is that there is something physical or mental that in some way prevents or limits them in some capacity. What is not limited is our potential or our capacity to live a full and complete life, to work, to go to school, to be part of our communities, to travel, to be successful, to dream big, and to thrive. I believe it is important to recognize that each and every person, regardless as to if they live with disability or not, is that there are things that they will be good at, things they will not be so great at. This is true for everyone. I have said many times, and on this podcast, that I will never be a great basketball player. And it has nothing to do with disability. As an executive and career coach, part of my job is to help the clients that I work with focus on their strengths and to serve as a guide to help them align their strengths with careers and how a career incorporates into their overall life goals. Clients get the credit for the outcomes. My job is to provide a safe space for them to explore their feelings about their career or their work in general and their goals, to help clients align those things in a way that feels right for them. It meets their personal needs and helps them feel confident and empowered to take the steps necessary to thrive. For anyone who has encountered or lives with disability, there are so many variables, and for many it can sometimes feel that society puts so many barriers in place that limiting our personal growth and aspirations is just a must. Barriers can range from the vast array of accessibility issues, which are common and likely an everyday experience for many people that live with disability. Barriers can also include things that are non-physical factors, such as stigma, shame, mental fatigue, depression, anxiety, and any number of other issues. The Dissing My Ability podcast has touched on so many of those issues in this first season. And it is my sincere hope that through the conversations that have occurred with the guests of the show, that it has helped listeners understand and have empathy and compassion for people who live with disability. Equally important is that I want this podcast to help people living with disability feel seen and heard, to know that they have value, are worthy of everything they want from life, and they are deserving of love, kindness, and opportunities. I do not claim to have all the answers, and there are times when other people within or outside the disability community might disagree with the perspective of a guest or even my perspective. I am okay with this. I believe that we need to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, and that to have these conversations openly, candidly, and with respect for each other, and with a genuine, sincere desire to understand each other better. To be able to work together to make things better for all of us, regardless as to disability. When I listen back to each episode, it warms my soul when guests openly talk about such important topics as mental health, depression, anxiety, and living with shame or stigma. I try to be as open and honest as possible about my own lived experience as a member of the LGBT plus community, my experience with severe anxiety and depression, encountering disability as an adult, and the challenges I have faced. I am certainly not immune from struggle, and my guests have taught me a lot. Montrese Hardy, she was my guest on episodes 11 and 12. She shared her thoughts and experience as a mother and as a Black woman living with disability. We openly discussed how intersectionality has played a pivotal role in both of our lives, and I'm extremely grateful to Montrese for her candor and her honesty. On episode 3, my dear and longtime friend Becky Smith talked openly about the challenges she faced on the long road to eventually being diagnosed with MS. As someone who has witnessed and observed all of the challenges she faced in real time when it was occurring, and as someone who cares deeply for Becky, I learned things that I hadn't known prior about the experiences she faced when trying to find out what was wrong with her personally. And her openness and her candor and the things that she shared, it only deepened my relationship with her and allowed me to have just that much more empathy and compassion, and it strengthened our friendship. On episode 9, Stephen Beard, a realtor in the San Francisco Bay Area, talked about the challenges that people living with disability often face with regard to housing and housing accessibility. His work as a realtor and advocate through his own podcast called Accessibility Matters is incredibly important in helping people understand the barriers to housing that exist for so many people. Fellow coach and professional colleague Marcia Wall was my guest on episode 14. I am grateful to Marcia for being so open about the challenges she faced due to undiagnosed mental health conditions when she was younger, and how addressing her condition helped her not only accomplish her own goals in life, but now she is able to help others do the same as a coach. On episodes 15 and 16, David Snyder spoke openly and honestly about his experience of becoming paralyzed as a teenager. David's perspective on how we sometimes can get in our own way is an important reflection on how we will make mistakes in life, and that it is important to forgive ourselves. That allows us to move forward. I feel very privileged and am honored to have each and every one of the guests on the Dissing My Ability podcast. I hope their appearances have added to your life. As I begin working on season 2, I encourage you to reach out to me if you are someone living with disability or you have experienced disability in some way. If you know someone who lives with a disability and think that their voice should be added to this conversation, I would love to hear from them as well. I genuinely believe that we all have something important and of value to contribute. You can find me at my website, vitalitycareercoaching.com, or on LinkedIn at Ken Meeker AZ. And you can also email me at Ken Meeker, that's KenMeeker AZ @gmail.com. Finally, I want to thank you for listening and tuning in. The positive feedback I have received from listeners has made doing this podcast incredibly rewarding, and it's a signal to me that it was the right decision to create and launch this podcast, and I really look forward to sharing season 2 with you. I am Ken Meeker, and this is the Dissing My Ability podcast. Please like, subscribe, and share. And as always, please remember to be kind to others and to yourself.